Why is Luigi kidnapping Mario? Well, you're about to find out in our latest episode of Cool Bits, where we spotlight hidden Easter eggs and secret details that you probably missed. And this time, we're taking a look at some borderline secrets that only the most patient of gamers will have discovered for the Super Game Boys. Back in 1994, the Super Game Boy was nothing short of magic. With the help of your Super Nintendo, it would take games that were stuck in a tiny black and white screen and magically put them on your TV.
In living color!
Or at least some color, while letting you play it with an actual controller. It was kind of like having a Nintendo Switch 20 years early.
Intense!
But because the Super Game Boy displays games at their native resolution, they wouldn't quite fill the entire TV screen. So, rather than forcing you to play them in a black void, though that is an option for those who crave nothing but darkness in their lives, Nintendo treated that blank space as a canvas in which to have some fun, as games that were designed with the Super Game Boy in mind could display their own custom unique border, while taking advantage of the Super Nintendo's advanced color palette, such as how Donkey Kong 94 made it appear as if you were playing on a classic arcade cabinet, which was pretty clever. But there are 9 other borders that came packed in with the Super Game Boy itself, that outside of a few exceptions, any game can take advantage of, even those that came out years earlier. And there's something here for everyone, whether it's a Game Boy border for a somewhat more authentic if ironic experience, or another that lets you play on an interactive billboard set in the country for some reason. Or you can go for something a little more abstract, like this artwork that would be right at home in a museum. And if none of these are to your liking, there's even an option to draw your own too. Though my personal favorite is this packed theater. Aw, did they all show up just to watch me play a game?
Thank you very much. I'm here till Thursday.
And that border looks especially funny when paired to the tutorial section from Donkey Kong 94, which featured its own audience too, which is an interesting coincidence considering that was the launch game for the Super Game Boy platform. And hey, is that even the same bald guy? Huh. Anyways, unlike most theater audiences these days, this one actually minds their manners by remaining perfectly quiet and still. That is, as long as you keep them entertained. Because if you start slacking off and don't touch a controller for 3 minutes, check out what happens. First, this guy starts jabbering to no one in particular, followed by this guy who starts to doze off. Then, the auditorium's lights will come on, suggesting even the theater staff are getting sick of your crap. Shortly after, the woman here will reapply her lipstick before checking in the mirror. Then the guy next to her will pull out a freaking newspaper. And finally, the 2 kids here will pull out Game Boys of their own and start playing against each other through the link cable. I wonder what game they're playing. And the audience will remain in this state until you finally decide to wake up and resume playing the game. It's a surprisingly involved animation for something you may never see. And as it turns out, it's not unique to this border, as nearly all the others have their own unique idle animation too, with all of them activating after 3 minutes of inactivity. The only exceptions are the Game Boy border, the Black Void, and the custom one. Although, they're also hiding secrets of their own too. Or should I say, two. Wait, that sounded the same. Anyways, we'll get to that soon enough. For now, let's explore what happens in all those other borders if you stop playing the game, including that one in which Luigi kidnaps Mario. This naturalistic border becomes a canvas that represents a typical day, with a sun rising among some clouds on the left side of the frame, as some ducks seemingly lay eggs along the top, followed by a fish splashing around in the water. Eventually, the sun sets and the moon rises on the opposite side of the screen, as it's accompanied by twinkling stars along the top. How peaceful! Soon after, the moon will set and the cycle will eventually repeat. This forest cabin border is similar, as we experience a sunset with the sky darkening and the tree shadow growing long, before the cabin's lights turn on and the night sky emerges, complete with the occasional shooting star. Shortly after, the cabin turns in for the night, but if you keep waiting, the sun will rise once again and the cycle begins anew. And here's something fun, if you resume playing at any point during this animation, you can actually freeze time in that exact moment, and make it your permanent backdrop, unless you let the game go idle again, of course. And this sure does beat that black void, wouldn't you agree? The various sleeping cats around this border will slowly spring to life, one by one, before darting off the screen in a random order until they're all gone. But once they're gone for good, even if you resume playing. Now this desk border is hiding a weird secret, because if you take a break, a hidden compartment will pop open and these little guys garbed in gray will pop out, as they have a very important task at hand, to push these pencils around. Huh, I guess their job is to literally be pencil pushers? I can't help but feel that there's some commentary here. Anyways, once they're through with their hard work, they'll return back to their compartment. Oh no! This poor little guy fell behind and got locked out! Ooh, they came back for him, thank goodness. But we're not done yet, because if you keep waiting, a second hidden compartment will open, from which a different team clad in white will emerge. And their only job is to undo all the hard work of the previous crew. Then once they're done, they'll return back to their compartment, and it'll go back and forth like this until the end of time. Or until you decide to start playing again. This is truly an eternal battle of red versus blue pencils. And that's not the last you'll see of these guys, but we'll get back to that in a bit. Next up is this more artistic border that could have been designed by MC Escher himself, as it strongly resembles his work, Relativity. And if you wait around, a surreal animation will begin, in which the screen is first obscured by a checkerboard pattern, before transforming into a tessellation, which is again reminiscent of MC Escher's own work. But this one goes a step further, as those lighter colored shapes begin to come to life and fly away. Okay. Now eventually the game screen itself will return, but if you continue to wait, the animation will repeat, but this time facing the other way, and with the darker colored shapes taking flight. And it'll continue to loop like this until you return to the game. Finally, we have this border, and it might be the most interesting, as we're seemingly trapped in a room floating in the sky, as we can see through the 4 windows from which all kinds of weird stuff happens. Because if you sit around and do nothing for 3 minutes, the boss man himself will eventually show up to survey what the holdup is, even impatiently tapping his shoe as he waits for you to start playing again. Huh, I thought that was more of a Sonic thing. Anyways, he'll eventually start to nod off from boredom, while standing, which is pretty impressive. And while he's sleeping, you might even catch him scratching his mustache or opening his mouth. Eventually, the princess will pop her head in and startle him awake. But suddenly, a race car shoots across the screen so fast it sends Mario spinning. Yet, after reassessing things, he somehow manages to fall asleep again. But this time, a UFO appears. And after circling Mario for a bit, it mysteriously exits via the top window. And just when you think it can't get any weirder, Luigi descends via rope, grabs Mario by his big fat head, and airlifts him away. What on earth just happened? Is that how Mario really went missing? Or is this a rescue mission? At any rate, if you wait around long enough, the animation will eventually repeat. But strangely, on subsequent runs, some of the animations will play out using the opposite window, although not all necessarily in the same run. Weird. But for as strange as this animation can be, it might be just slightly less random than it first seems, because that Formula 1 car is actually a reference to another Nintendo game for the Game Boy, being F1 Race, in which Mario himself even made a cameo appearance. So I guess it's just returning the favor? Also, they did something clever here. Because the race car can pop out of either window, they designed the sprite in such a way that the number can be read both normally and when mirrored. Although it's not the same number. Normally it appears as 21, but when mirrored it's 15. Pretty clever, huh? Now the UFO is a little more mysterious, but it could be a reference to Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, in which UFOs appeared throughout the second world. Although a UFO also appeared in the best ending of Dr. Mario as well, Game Boy version included. And then there was also a UFO featured on Mario Paint for the Super NES just a couple of years earlier. And both of these games did allow you to paint. In any case, I think the real point of this is, what the heck was with Nintendo and UFOs in Mario games back then? So that's it for all the secret border animations. Or is it? Because as we've mentioned, the Super Game Boy lets you create your own borders too. And even though this one doesn't feature an idle animation during gameplay, check out what happens if you take a break during the creation process itself. Yeah, it's one of those little guys from earlier. But what's he doing? Hey, stop it! That's no mess! That's my magnum opus! Yeah, this cheeky little janitor comes in to clean up your mess. But before you curse him out too much, hang tight, as once you return to the game, your art will slowly come back. Phew, crisis averted. And that wraps it up for this episode of Cool Bits. I think that means we're not done yet? I guess I may have forgotten to circle back to those 2 non-animated borders that I said had secrets all their own. But for that, I need to first introduce you to this bad boy, the Super Game Boy 2. And this might be the first you've ever seen of it, as it never released outside of Japan. Beyond the cool blue exterior and the new power light, it comes with a few other enhancements too, such as running games with 100% accuracy, unlike the original Super Game Boy, which ran them 2.4% faster than intended, along with a link cable port for 2-player action, and most importantly for our purposes, 8 brand new borders that replace everything but the black void and the custom ones you make yourself. And yeah, you better believe they all come with their own unique idle animations too. Well, all of them except for the new Game Boy one, that is, which has been updated to resemble the Game Boy Pocket. But the next border is also of the Game Boy Pocket too, only this time with the outer shell removed, revealing the circuitry inside. But if you wait long enough, the lights will dim as various parts of the circuit board begin to glow. Ooh, pretty. Now this jungle border tells a whole story, as a multitude of monkeys start monkeying around. The first pair will immediately clamber up the trees to the top of the Game Boy screen, with the purple one hanging from it as he shimmies across, while the gray one patrols above, while wielding a hammer? What's he planning exactly? More monkeys appear soon after. A blue one attempts that same climb, but fails repeatedly, while the yellow and green monkeys hold an entire conversation, perhaps talking about the failures of that poor blue monkey? Then, orange and white monkeys scurry along the ground, before the white one eventually attempts the same climb. And he actually makes it! Filled with confidence, he shimmies across the screen's ledge before taking a break in the middle. Wait a second. What's that monkey with a hammer planning? Oh my god! He just smashed that poor monkey! Unable to regain his grip, the poor monkey desperately digs into the screen as he slowly slides to the ground. Oof. But he doesn't let that keep him down, as he'll get right back up and try again, over and over and over, getting hammered at all. That is until you return to the game, of course, which you probably should for his own sake. This border made of tiles includes artwork of both the Game Boy and the Super Nintendo controller, or Super Famicom in this case. But if you wait around, you'll be treated to a nighttime spectacle that might just rival Disneyland's Main Street Electrical Parade, as multiple groups of tiny people put on a parade sorted by color, with each group even being led by its own Grand Marshal, as they accompany colorful floats based on the same Game Boy and controller art from earlier. If you get those gears turning inside your head, I'll bet you can guess what's going to happen in this border. Yeah, the gears will start turning by themselves, a bit slowly to start before reaching full speed. It's oddly satisfying. When this Savannah border comes to life, it almost feels like watching a wildlife show. First, you might spot some kind of small mammal scurrying from the bush before peeking out from behind the screen, followed by a gator that swims by and then submerges, just before a frog takes its place and swims away. We can also spot the silhouette of a distant giraffe taking a snack break during his walk, along with birds that fly by overhead in solo, duo, and trio forms. Speaking of wildlife, this underwater border is wild, as it will eventually go dark and the spotlights will come on, with the dolphins and clams putting on some kind of song and dance show. I don't know what it is exactly, but there's just something about this one that really creeps me out. Maybe it's a good thing we can't actually hear them sing. Now the dolphins will eventually swap positions before the show comes to an end. It's so weird. The final border is of a coliseum, and if you wait around, the entire place will spring to life, with fire that dances, fireworks filling the sky, and even the crowd doing the wave. Neat. And if you wait even longer, they'll eventually hold up letter signs that spell out the word fight. Yeah, now that we made them wait an unnecessarily long time, they're out for blood. We better get a move on. And speaking of which, if you want to get a move on yourself, we have a secret just for you. Because there's actually a code that will activate any of these idle animations instantly without having to wait the full 3 minutes. And it works on both Super Game Boys. All you have to do is make sure the Super Game Boy menu is closed, then quickly press the L button 4 times followed by the R button once. Although it can be a bit finicky, so you may need to repeat the code once or twice if it doesn't take the first time. In any case, you'll hear a chime if it worked, and the animation will start up right away. Now, even though that actually is it for all the idle animations, there is still one new border left for us to discuss, being the Game Boy Pocket one, because it's hiding a secret all of its own, or rather 6 of them, as this border is actually 7 in 1, with 7 different versions to match every color the Game Boy Pocket came in. To swap between them, make sure the Super Game Boy's menu is closed, then use the exact same code as before, being to quickly press the L button 4 times followed by the R button once, which will let you cycle to the next color each time you enter it. This includes pink, yellow, green, blue, red, and black, before circling back to silver. Now, there were technically also clear versions of the Game Boy Pocket that were available, but we'd say that this border gets pretty close. So as you can see, the Super Game Boy 2's new borders are just as impressive as the ones that they replaced. But what if I told you they actually didn't replace anything at all? Because guess what? All 8 of the original borders are secretly back too. And that's where the Dark Void's Dark Secret comes in that we mentioned way earlier, as the version in the Super Game Boy 2 is hiding something. All you have to do is make sure the menu is closed, then use that same code you've already mentioned twice now, being LLLL and R. As always, you'll hear a chime if it worked, And what it just did is revert all the new borders back to the original ones from the first Super Game Boy. Even the Game Boy one. And they're exactly the same as before, idle animations and all. And yes, you can repeat the code in the Dark Void to cycle between the two sets. Woo, we've covered quite a bit. But believe it or not, both Super Game Boys are hiding one more secret. A code to access the credits. Just make sure you're not doing anything important first, as there's no way to return to the game without resetting the system. So like usual, make sure the menu is closed, then quickly press a code shown on the screen. Yeah, it's a long one. Basically, it's L 3 times, then R 3 times, L 3 more times, then R a whole bunch. If you did it right, the staff credits will immediately start up. And it's the only way to access them, as there isn't exactly a game to beat here. Now, while the credits for the Super Game Boy and the Super Game Boy 2 are pretty similar, the Super Game Boy's 2's is not only more colorful, but also has an entirely different music track too. And I kinda dig this one more. Either way, both end with a cute message from the staff teasing their next project. And it's even signed with a date too, which is actually pretty unusual for Nintendo. It really helps bring a cute personal touch to what's otherwise a very magical experience. Because even though idle animations were nothing new in games even then, it was fairly unprecedented for something that wasn't even a game, but more of a platform itself. Especially when those animations altogether total around 30 minutes long. And it truly did ensure that the Super Game Boy and Super Game Boy 2 had a lot of charm, and we think those are some pretty cool bits. Oh, and if you want to see any of the animations or credits play out in full, without any of the editing we've done here, I've compiled all of them into a lengthy separate video linked in the description below. And that wraps up for this episode of Cool Bits. Make sure to check out our playlist for even more episodes, and let us know if you have any cool bits of your own by posting in the comments below, and we may feature it in a future episode. Thanks for watching, and make sure to click that subscribe button and ring that bell for more cool bits in the future and other fun features. And with that, we'll catch you later. Bye everyone!